hear you.
Okay, great. So we'll get started. Om Jnanatimirandasya Jnananjana-shalakaya Chakshurunmilitam Yena Tasmai Shri Guruve Namaha. Shri Chaitanya Manobishtam Sthapitam Yena Bhutale Swayam Rupa Kadamayam Dadati Swapadantikam Mandegam Shri Guru Shri Yuta Kamalam Shri Gurun Vaishnavamscha Shri Rupam Sagrajatam Sakagana Raghunatham Tam Sajivam Sadvaidam Savadutam Parijana Sahitam Krishna Chaitanya Devam Shri Radha Krishna Padan Sakagana Lalita Shri Vishakhanvitamscha He Krishna Karuna Sindhu Dinabandhu Jagatpate Gopesha Gopika Kanta Radha Kanta Namostute तप्त कांचन गौरांगी राधे वृंदावनेश्वरी वृषभानुसुते देवी प्रणमामि हरिप्रिये वाञ्छाकल्पतरुभ्यश्च कृपा सिन्धुभ्यैव च पतितानां पावनेभ्यो वैष्णवेभ्यो नमो नमः। जय श्री कृष्ण चैतन्य प्रभु नित्यानंद श्री अद्वैत गदाधर श्रीवासादि गौर भक्त वृंद हरे कृष्णा कृष्ण कृष्ण हरे 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 राम 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 हरे हरे। So we are starting from 2.59, I believe, right? Yeah, last week we saw 2.58, so we're going to see 2.59. So I'll just read the translation of the last verse. One who is able to withdraw his senses from sense objects, as the tortoise draws its limbs within the shell, is firmly fixed in perfect consciousness. 2.59. विषयाग्नि वर्तन्ते निर्कारस्य देहिनः रसवर्जं रसोऽपि अस्य परं दृष्ट्वा निवर्तते। विषयः objects for sense enjoyment vinivartante are practiced to be refrained from niraharasya by negative restrictions. Dehinah for the embodied, rasavarjam giving up the taste, rasaha sense enjoyment, api although there is asya his param for superior things, drishtva by experiencing, nevartate he ceases from. Translation and purport by His Divine Grace A.C. Bhaktivedanta Swami Srila Prabhupada. Though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for sense objects remains. But ceasing such engagements by experiencing a higher taste, he is fixed in consciousness. Purport. Unless one is transcendently situated, it is not possible to cease from sense enjoyment. The process of restriction from sense enjoyment by rules and regulations is something like restricting a diseased person from certain types of eatables. The patient, however, neither likes such restrictions nor loses his taste for eatables. Similarly, sense restriction by some spiritual process like Ashtanga Yoga in the matter of Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, etc. is recommended for less intelligent persons who have no better knowledge. But one who has tasted the beauty of the Supreme Lord Krishna in the course of his advancement in Krishna consciousness no longer has a taste for dead material things. Therefore, restrictions are there for less intelligent neophytes in the spiritual advancement of life. But such restrictions are only good until one actually has a taste for Krishna consciousness. When one is actually Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things. So, yeah, we are continuing from this set of verses, the second chapter, right? So, we are covering this Sthita Pragya. Arjuna asked this question: what are the symptoms of a person who is fixed in, transcendental consciousness? Right? That's what Arjuna asked. And then, what are the symptoms? How does he speak? How does he sit? And how does he walk? Right? So that's what he asked. Right? And then we saw last week, right? So this general symptoms, the general symptoms of a person, right? Who is fixed in transcendental divine consciousness. And then next we saw the specific symptoms, right? What are the how does he speak? So that's what we see. Speaking means when somebody insults him or somebody provokes him, how does he respond in his internally and externally? In his mind, that is means his intelligence, and then through his speech. So that's what we saw last week. Right? Krishna defines that definition of Sthitadhira Muni. Right? The sage of steady mind. We saw that. So now, we are going to see this symptoms of the person who, how does he sit? How does he sit means how does he control his senses? In the previous verse 2.58 we saw that, like Krishna gives the analogy of a tortoise, right? So how when there is an external disturbance, tortoise immediately withdraw its limbs. Similarly, a devotee, he will use his senses in serving Krishna. But the moment some sense object is presented to him to enjoy independent of Krishna, immediately he rejects it. He withdraws his senses. Like the tortoise does that. So now 2.59, Krishna actually said that, right? So even though the process of restriction, withdrawing the senses, it's not easy at all. Right? The taste for material enjoyment is still lingering in the mind. Right? Once we have tasted something, we cannot give up easily. So the mind always is asking for more. Right? The mind is going through the process of thinking, feeling, and willing. Hence, it is always meditating on if I take this, if I enjoy that, it will be good for me. So it is very difficult, the process. That's what the 2.59 we saw. Krishna is telling, though the embodied soul may be restricted from sense enjoyment, the taste for object remains. But ceasing such engagement by experiencing higher taste is fixed in consciousness. So the only way to give up the sense enjoyment is by developing higher taste. Param drishtva nivartate. By developing taste for something higher, automatically the taste for something lower can be given up. Here Prabhupada in the purport mentioned, one who is actually in Krishna conscious, he automatically loses his taste for pale things. Once one surrenders to Krishna and then engages in devotional service, When he engages in devotional service, Krishna reciprocates for that service. When he reciprocates, he actually experiences satisfaction in his heart. When he engages in serving Krishna, he develops a taste for that service. So by developing such a taste for serving Krishna, he automatically loses interest in serving his own senses or engaging his own senses in sense gratification. So that's what Prabhupada is telling. By the mechanical process for like a Ashtanga Yoga, Yama, Niyama, Asana, Pranayama, Pratyahara, Dharana, Dhyana, through that one might be able to mechanically control the mind from the sense objects. But that is very difficult. Prabhupada is telling that might be necessary for a person who is in the beginning stage of spiritual life. A person who has advanced knowledge, that means one who understands Krishna is the supreme source of everything, is the supreme proprietor of everything, and supreme controller of everything, and supreme enjoyer of everything. Hence, everything has to be engaged in serving Krishna. He is the owner of everything, and everything is there for his service. Once who understands this, he will use the things properly, not for his own sense gratification. So when he does that, right, when he has this higher knowledge, when he serves in that way, when Krishna reciprocates, he doesn't have any more taste for lower things, his own sense gratification. 2.60 we'll read. Yatato hi apya kaunteya purushasya vipashyataka indriyani pramatini haranti prashabam manaha. Yataha, while endeavoring, he certainly appeared in spite of Kaunteya, O son of Kunti, Purushasya, of a man, Vipaschitaha, full of discriminating knowledge, Indriyani, the senses, Pramatini, agitating, Haranti, throw, Prashabdam, by force, Manaha, the mind. Translation. The senses are so strong and impetuous, O Arjuna, that they forcibly carry away the mind, even of a man of discrimination who is endeavoring to control them. Purport. There are many learned sages, philosophers, and transcendentalists who try to conquer the senses. But in spite of their endeavors, even the greatest of them sometimes fall victim to a material sense enjoyment due to the agitated mind. Even Vishwamitra, a great sage and perfect yogi, was misled by Manaka into sense enjoyment. Although the yogi was endeavoring for sense control with severe types of penance and yoga practice, and of course, there are so many similar instances in the history of the world. Therefore, it is very difficult to control the mind and senses without being fully Krishna conscious. Without engaging the mind in Krishna, one cannot cease such material engagements. By practical example is given by Sri Yamunacharya, a great saint and devotee, who says, Yat avadi mama cheta Krishna padaravinde nava rasa damanya yudayatam rantam asit tadavadi bada nari sangame smar yamane bhavati mukha vikaraga shushtu nistivanam cha. Since my senses have been engaged in service of the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, and I have been enjoying an ever new transcendental humor, whenever I think of sex life with a woman, my face at once turns from it, and I spit it at the thought. I spit at the thought. So this is from Stotra Ratna by Srila Yamunacharya, the Guru of Ramanacharya. He is writing. The once he developed his taste for serving Krishna in spiritual life, he doesn't have any more lower taste. For example, even the thought of having material enjoyment like sex life. Even the thought itself, he wants to spit at it because he is not anymore interested. So Krishna consciousness is such a transcendently nice thing that automatically material engagement becomes distasteful. It is as if a hungry man had satisfied his hunger by sufficient quantity of nutritious eatables. Maharaj Ambarisha also conquered a great yogi, Durvasha Muni, simply because his mind was engaged in Krishna consciousness. Savai mana Krishna Padaravendur Vachamsi Vaikunda Gunanu Varnane. So here, right, Prabhupada is explaining, if somebody is hungry, if you give him anything, whether he likes it or not, if somebody is hungry, he will eat. But if somebody is satisfied, if somebody had fully eaten, if stomach is full and he is fully satisfied his hunger, even if you bring most palatable things to him, he said, no, I don't want it. I am actually full. Right? So like that, a person who is engaged in Krishna consciousness, his heart is completely satisfied. When the soul is satisfied, when the heart is satisfied, he doesn't want any more engagement in sense gratification. Hence, he is not interested at all in sense gratification. So, that's what actually like here Prabhupada is telling, right? So, if somebody is hungry, if you give him, he will eat. But if somebody is satisfied his hunger, he is not anymore interested even in the most palatable thing. Similarly, a person when he engages in serving Krishna, by reciprocation from Krishna, the soul is completely satisfied in the service of Krishna. He doesn't have any more hunger of the heart. Hence, he is not interested in sense gratification. Another example here from Srimad Bhagavatam, it is given, right? Maharaj Ambarisha, so there is a very nice pastime in Srimad Bhagavatam that there is a great devotee of Lord Krishna who had conquered all his senses in engaging them in serving Krishna. And there is a Durvasa Muni. Durvasa Muni comes to the kingdom of Ambarish Maharaj with his thousands of disciples. And then he wanted to eat. Meanwhile, he said, I want to go take bath and come. So the king is waiting for Durvasa Muni and his entourage to take bath in the river and come back. But he's waiting, they are not coming. They are taking more time. Meanwhile, Ambarish Maharaj, who have been fasting for a long time for the welfare of his own subjects in the kingdom, he have been fasting. When somebody is fasting, that fasting should be broken at a particular time. That's called Parana. The Parana has to be done in a specific time window. In this case, because Ambarish Maharaj was fasting for a long time, in order to get the full benefit of the fasting, he has to break the fasting at the appropriate time. And that fast breaking time was getting over pretty soon. But still, Durvasa Muni and his entourage did not come back. Now, immediately, he consults with the Brahmana in this court, in this kingdom. What should I do? Because it is the etiquette of the host until the guest is eaten, until the guest is fed sumptuously, the host should not eat. That is the etiquette. Now, Durvasa Muni have not come. What should I do? Because the fast breaking time is, coming to be over soon. What should I do? Immediately the Brahmanas, they devise a method. They tell the king, you have been fasting completely not even from water. So by drinking water, it is equivalent to breaking the fast. At the same time, drinking water is not equivalent to eating. That way, if you drink the water, it is equal to you breaking the fast. At the same time, you are not disrespectful to the guest, Durvasa Muni. You are not breaking the etiquette of, first feeding the guest and then you eating. Because drinking water is not, in one sense it is breaking the fast, and the other sense it is not eatable. It is not eating. Drinking water is not considered to be eating. So they give this advice. So based on that, Ambarish Maharaj, he takes the Charanamrit offered to Krishna, and then he prays and he's about to break the fast. He is drinking the water, the Charanamrit, which has been, offered to him to break the fast. When he is actually taking the Charanamrit, at that time Durvasa Muni comes. Once he sees the king is actually taking this Charanamrit, Durvasa Muni, yeah, we all know, right? Durvasa Muni is like known for his anger, short temper. Immediately gets angry. Then immediately he says, what kind of a host you are, what kind of a king? You don't have etiquette. Before even serving the guest, how you can actually, eat. So you are like disrespectful to me. You are of lower intelligence or lower culture. Like that he becomes angry. Then immediately he plucks a hair from his head and then chants a mantra, throws at it. Immediately a demon, a fiery demon comes out from that hair. And he actually, the intention was that demon is supposed to kill the king. He said, you are disrespectful to me, you dishonored me by eating before me, so you deserve to be punished, you deserve to be killed. And then he chants this mantra, a demon comes from a fiery demon comes from the hand. And then the demon is supposed to go and kill the king. But the king was very humble. He prays to just simply to Krishna. That demon, right, that fiery demon, when it is coming out, immediately Sudarshan Chakra of Vishnu comes and then destroys that demon, and then it's the Sudarshan Chakra of Krishna start chasing Durvasa Muni, and Durvasa Muni goes all over the universe, no shelter. He is not able to get protection from he is not able to avoid the Sudarshan Chakra. Finally, he goes to Vishnu Loka and surrenders to Vishnu, and he says, Vishnu, this is this chakra is yours. This is chasing me. He is trying to kill me. Please protect me. At that time, Lord Vishnu says, because whenever my devotee is put in danger, without even my permission, my Sudarshan Chakra goes to protect my devotee. Given that you had offended my devotee, Ambarish, the power is not within me to withdraw this Sudarshan Chakra. You have to go and ask permission. You have to ask forgiveness from Ambarish itself. Then only the Sudarshan Chakra can stop attacking you. So then, finally, Durvasa Muni goes back to Ambarish Maharaj, and then he asks for forgiveness. Immediately, Ambarish Maharaj, he comes and hugs him. He says, oh, sage, I am not offended at all. So by his word that I am not offended, immediately Sudarshan Chakra withdraws and goes back to Vishnu. So the whole episode, the whole pastime from Srimad Bhagavatam indicates that how, even though one might be a great yogi, he might have several mystic powers, but he is nowhere compared to equivalent to the potency of a devotee. Ambarish Maharaj, even though he is a king, he is not a sannyasi, he is a grihastha, but he has perfect control over his senses. He knows perfectly how to engage all his senses in serving Krishna. Because he has control over the senses, he surrendered completely to Krishna. So Krishna's Sudarshan Chakra comes to protect him. So from this we can understand, the Vaishnavas are, more powerful than a yogi or a great sage in ordinary sense. Next verse, 2.61. तानि सर्वाणि संयम्य युक्त आसीत मत्परः वशे हि यस्येन्द्रियाणि तस्य प्रज्ञा प्रतिष्ठिता तानि those senses सर्वाणि all samyamya keeping under control yuktaka engaged asita should be situated matparaha in relationship with me vase in full subjugation he certainly yashya one whose indriyani senses tasya him prajna consciousness pratisthita fixed. Translation: one who restrains his senses, keeping them under full control and fixes his consciousness upon me is known as a man of steady intelligence. That the highest conception of purport, the highest conception of yoga, the highest conception of yoga perfection is Krishna consciousness is clearly explained in this verse. And unless one is Krishna conscious, it is not possible, not at all possible, to control the senses. As cited above, the great sage Durvasha Muni picked a quarrel with Maharaj Ambarisha, and Durvasha Muni unnecessarily became angry out of pride and therefore could not check his senses. On the other hand, the king, although not as powerful a yogi as the sage, but a devotee of the Lord, silently tolerated all the sage's injustices and thereby emerged victorious. The king was able to control his senses because of following qualification as mentioned in Srimad Bhagavatam. This is coming from 9th canto, 4th chapter, so verses 18 to 20. Savai Mana Krishna Paradaramdayor Vachamshi Vaikunda Gunan Varnane Karau Harer Mandira Marjanadishu Shrutim Chakraichuda Sat Kadodaye Mukunda Lingalaya Darshane Drishau Tad Britya Gatrasparshe Anga Sangamam Grhnam Chat Tatpada Saroja Sauraibe Srimad Tulasya Rasanam Tat Arpite Padau Hare Kshetra Padam Sharpane Shiro Hrishikesha Padabi Vandane Kamam Cha Dashi Na Tu Kamyaya Yatotma Shloka Janashraya Ratihi. King Ambarisha fixed his mind on the lotus feet of Lord Krishna, engaged his words in describing the abode of the Lord, his hands in cleansing the temple of the Lord, his ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, his eyes in seeing the form of the Lord, his body in touching the body of the devotee, his nostrils in smelling the flavor of the flowers offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, his tongue in tasting tulsi leaves offered to him, his legs in traveling to the holy places where his temple is situated, his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord. And all these qualifications made him fit to become a Matpara devotee of the Lord. So here, earlier Krishna says that by becoming a Matpara devotee, one can become a man of steady intelligence, right? Completely fixing the consciousness on Krishna, Matpara, right? Here it said Matpara means completely keeping me as the focus of his life, right? Completely by fixing the consciousness upon Krishna, he becomes a man of steady intelligence. Here, this example is given from Srimad Bhagavatam. Ambarish Maharaj had become this Matpara devotee. How? By properly engaging all the senses. His mind is absorbed in the lotus feet of Krishna. His words are describing the abode of the Lord. His hand in cleansing the temple of the Lord. His ears in hearing the pastimes of the Lord, in eyes, in seeing the form of the Lord, his body touching or embracing the devotees of the Lord, his nostrils in smelling the flowers which are offered to the lotus feet of the Lord, and his tongue in tasting the tulsi leaves offered to him, his legs in traveling to the holy place where temple is situated, and his head in offering obeisances unto the Lord, and his desires in fulfilling the desires of the Lord. And all this qualification made him fit to become a Matpara devotee of the Lord. So by engaging all the senses in appropriate way, one can overcome the lower taste of sense enjoyment. By becoming that, he becomes a Matpara devotee, completely get absorbed in Krishna. The word Matpara is most significant in this connection. One can become Matpara is described in the life of Maharaj Ambarisha. How one can become Matpara is described in the life of Maharaj Ambarisha. Srila Baladev Vidyabhusana, a great scholar and acharya in the line of the Matpara, remarks, Matbhakti Prabhavena Sharvendriya Vijaya Purvika Swatma Drishti Su Labeti Bhavaha. The senses can be completely controlled only by the strength of devotion service to Krishna. Also, the example of fire is sometimes given. As a blazing fire burns everything within a room, Lord Vishnu, situated in the heart of the yogi, burns up all kinds of impurities. The Yoga Shastra, Yoga Sutra also prescribes meditation on Vishnu and not meditation on the void. The so-called yogis who meditate on something other than Vishnu form, simply waste their time in a vain search after some phantasmagoria. We have to be Krishna conscious, devoted to personality of Godhead. This is the aim of real yoga. So here, right, Prabhupada is giving in the purport very clearly. The Matpara devotee means by completely becoming absorbed in Krishna, by engaging devotional service to Krishna, one can become Matpara devotee. Because by engaging in service of Krishna, Krishna at the heart purifies the devotee's desires. He doesn't have any more desire for engaging his senses in sense gratification. So the goal, the real aim of yoga is to develop love for Krishna and serve him with that loving devotion. So that's the conclusion of that above verse 2.62. Dhyayato Vishayan Pupshaga Sangasteshu Pajayate Sangat Sanjayate Kamaha Kamat Koda Vijayate. Dhyayataha, while contemplating Vishayan, sense objects, Pupshaga, of a person, Sangaga, attachment, Teshu, in the sense objects, Upajayate, develops Sangat from attachment. Sanjayate, develops Kamaha, desire, Kamat, from desire, Krodaga, anger, Abhijayate, becomes manifest. Now, this set of verses, 2.62 onwards, Krishna explains one who is not fixed his mind on Krishna. If the mind is not engaged in serving Krishna, on meditating Krishna, what the mind will do? Mind will start contemplating on the sense objects. When one contemplates on the sense object, what happens? It's matter of time he is going to fall down. The process of falling down is the one Krishna is describing here. While contemplating the senses of the senses, a person develops attachment for them. And from such attachment, lust develops. And from lust, anger arises. So here, the process how one falls down is described in the two verses. 2.62 and 63 describes the process how one falls down from this fixed consciousness to lower consciousness. By contemplating on the sense objects, when the mind contemplates on the sense objects, he develops attachment for the sense objects because he wants to enjoy them. Obviously, when we try to enjoy the sense objects, we will not be satisfied. or sometimes it is not feasible, it's not available, the sense object what we want. When the senses does not get satisfied with the sense objects, we end up in frustration, we feel frustrated. When somebody is frustrated, that frustration will lead to anger. So that's what here it's mentioned. Purport. One who is not Krishna conscious is subject to material desires while contemplating the object of the senses. The sense requires real engagements, and if they are not engaged in the transcendental loving service of the Lord, they will certainly seek engagement in the service of materialism. In the material world, everyone, including Lord Shiva and Lord Brahma, to say nothing of other demigods in the heavenly planets, is subjected to the influence of sense objects. And the only method to get out of this puzzle of material existence is to become Krishna conscious. Lord Shiva was deep in meditation, but when Parvati agitated him for sense pleasure, he agreed to the proposal. And as a result, Kartikeya was born. When Haridas Thakura was a young devotee of the Lord, he was similarly allured by the incarnation of Maya Devi. But Haridasa easily passed the test because of his unalloyed devotion to Lord Krishna. As illustrated in the above mentioned verses of Sri Yamunacharya, a sincere devotee of the Lord shuns all material enjoyment due to his higher taste for spiritual enjoyment and association of the Lord. That is the secret of success. One who is not, therefore, in Krishna consciousness, however powerful he may be in controlling the senses by artificial repression, is sure ultimately to fall, to fail. For the slightest thought of sense pleasure will agitate him to gratify his desires. 263. Krodhat bhavati sammoha sammohat smriti vibhramaha smriti brahmshat buddhinashat pranashyati. Krodhat, from anger, bhavati, takes place, sammoha, perfect illusion, sammohat, from illusion, smriti, of memory, vibhramaha, bewilderment, smriti, smriti brahmshat, after bewilderment of memory, buddhi nashaka, loss of intelligence, buddhi nashat, from loss of intelligence, pranashyati, one falls down. Translation. From anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. When memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. When intelligence is lost, one falls down again into the material pool. Here, those two verses, as we spoke, describes the how a person falls down from a higher consciousness to lower consciousness. By meditating on the sense objects, one develops attachment to those sense objects. By developing attachment to the sense objects, from that attachment arises anger, because the attachment to the sense object does not end up in satisfaction, it ends up in frustration. That will lead to anger. From anger, complete delusion arises, and from delusion, bewilderment of memory. And when the memory is lost, memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. When the intelligence is lost, one falls down again to the material pool. When someone is anger, right, he gets deluded. And then from the deludement, memory gets confused. When the memory is bewildered, his intelligence can't function. Because for the intelligence to function, it needs the support of the memory. What to do, what not to do. What we heard from the scripture, one should remember. So that remembrance comes from the memory. So when the memory is bewildered, the intelligence can't function. When the intelligence is not function, it can't discriminate what is right, what is wrong. So when the discriminating ability goes away, he falls down again into the material pool because of the sense enjoyment. Purport. Srila Rupa Goswami has given us this direction. Prapanchikataya buddhaya हरिसंबंध वस्तुनः मुकुंशुभिः परित्यागो वैराग्यं फल्गु कथ्यते. This is from Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu, first division, second chapter, 258th verse. By development of Krishna conscious, one can know that everything has its use in the service of the Lord. Those who are without knowledge of Krishna artificially try to avoid material objects. As a result, although they desire liberation from material bondage, they do not attain to the perfect stage of renunciation. Their so-called renunciation is called falgu, or less important. On the other hand, a person in Krishna consciousness knows how to use everything in service of the Lord. Therefore, he does not become a victim of the material consciousness. For example, for an impersonalist, the Lord or the Absolute Being impersonal cannot eat. Whereas an impersonalist tries to avoid good eatables, a devotee knows that Krishna is the supreme enjoyer and that he eats all that is offered to him in devotion. So after offering the good eatables to the Lord, the devotee takes the remnants called prasadam. Thus everything becomes spiritualized and there is no danger of a downfall. The devotee takes prasadam in Krishna consciousness, whereas the non-devotee rejects it as material. The impersonalist therefore cannot enjoy life due to his artificial renunciation. And for this reason, a slight agitation of the mind pulls him down into the pool of material existence. It is said that such a soul, even though rising up to the point of liberation, falls down again due to his not having support in devotional service. So here in this verse, Prabhupada is very clearly telling, by quoting Rupa Goswami, if one is not engaged in Krishna consciousness, he will not know how to use everything in service of Krishna. One doesn't know how to use everything in service of Krishna, he will reject those, thinking that if I use that, I will get entangled in karmic reaction. By artificially rejecting his tyaga is called Falgu Vairagya. Falgu Vairagya means there is a river called Falgu river. This is in Bihar, this river is there. That river, the speciality of that river is, if you see, that river is always dry. You will see only sand. There is no water. But if you go inside the river, stand on the sand, you can feel the water is flowing under the sand. The water is flowing under the sand. But by looking from outside, you will not feel that water is flowing at all. So, a person who artificially renounces the sense objects by not developing higher taste in serving Krishna, that type of renunciation, even though he externally is rejecting those things, his mind is still lingering on those things. Like how water is still flowing under the sand, even though the water is not visible on the surface, still water is flowing in the Falgu river, under the river, under the sand. Similarly, a person might be externally renouncing, but still his mind is attached to those sense objects. That kind of renunciation externally is like a Falgu Vairagya. So that is what, here, that's what here Rupa Goswami mentions in Bhakti Rasamrita Sindhu. The real renunciation is by understanding that everything has to be utilized in service of Krishna. By engaging in service of Krishna, those things are perfectly can be utilized. But one who doesn't have this knowledge, when he tries to artificially renounce externally, but the mind is still lingering on those sense objects, that renunciation is called Falgu Vairagya. For example, for an impersonalist, the Lord, we already covered that, So that's what this purport Prabhupada is telling. Here another example Prabhupada is giving, an impersonalist doesn't know the supreme absolute truth is the personality of Godhead Bhagavan. If one he understands the supreme absolute truth is Bhagavan, what he will do? He will offer everything to Krishna. Any eatables he sees or he cooks, he will offer to the pleasure of Krishna. And when Krishna tastes that bhoga, right? What happens? That even though it is something is material, that food stuff, and Krishna taste is completely gets purified, it becomes spiritual, it gets sanctified completely. So such a thing, such a food stuff which is offered to Krishna, when Krishna gives it back, that we call it as prasadam. When the bhoga is offered to Krishna by the love of the devotee, in which they offer the prayer, just by hearing the prayers, Krishna tastes through his ears. It's because Krishna's senses are interchangeable. Our senses cannot do one function, one sense cannot do function of another sense. Whereas Krishna's sense, they are all spiritual. Just by hearing, he can actually taste. When a devotee offers the prayer by offering the bhoga to the Lord, just by hearing the prayer, the Lord tastes. The moment the Lord tastes the bhoga, it becomes prasadam. It becomes completely sanctified, purified, spiritual. Such a food stuff which is offered to Krishna, the devotee eats it, understanding that this is prasad of Krishna, mercy of Krishna. For a person who is eating food stuff which is offered to Krishna, he does not get any more karmic reaction. His senses will be still under control. His senses will not get agitated. So that is what here Prabhupada is explaining. An impersonalist may not know. Whereas a devotee knows how to engage everything in Krishna. If he sees a nice apple, immediately he will offer the apple to Krishna. After offering the apple to Krishna, Krishna gives it back as Mahaprasad. And that food, that apple, once it's offered to Krishna, it's completely sanctified, purified. So by tasting it, our senses will not get contaminated. Our senses, in fact, will get purified only. So this is how a devotee engages everything in service of Krishna. 64. Ragadvesha vimuktaistu vishayan indriyecharan atma vaishyar vidyatma prasadam adhigacchati. Raga, attachment, dvesha, and detachment, vimuktai, by one who has become free from, to, but vishayan, sense objects, indriyai, by the senses, charan, acting upon, atma vaishyai, under one's control, videya atma, one who follows regulated freedom, prasadam, the mercy of the Lord, adhigacchati, attains. Translation. But a person free from all attachment and aversion and able to control his senses through regulative principles of freedom can obtain complete mercy of the Lord. Purport. It is already explained that one may externally control the senses by artificial process, but unless the senses are engaged in transcendental service of the Lord, there is every chance of a fall. Although the person is in full Krishna consciousness, may apparently be on the sensual plane. Because of his being Krishna conscious, he has no attachment to the sensual activities. The Krishna conscious person is concerned only with the satisfaction of Krishna and nothing else. Therefore, he is transcendent to all attachment and detachment. If Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable. And if Krishna doesn't want, he shall not do that, which he would have ordinarily done for his own satisfaction. Therefore, to act or not to act is within his control, because he acts under the direction of Krishna. This consciousness is the costless mercy of the Lord, which the devotee can achieve in spite of his being attached to the sensual platform. So here Prabhupada further elaborates here that by being situated in Krishna consciousness, he knows how to engage all the sense objects in the service of Krishna. By engaging his senses in the serving Krishna, his senses are not getting agitated. He is under control because they are under control of Krishna. When a devotee surrenders, his senses comes under the control of Krishna. right? Krishna is called Krishikesha. Krishna is one of the name. Is called Krishikesha. Krishikesha means the controller of the senses. When a devotee surrenders to Krishna and engages in devotional service to Krishna, Krishna takes charge of his senses. Hence, he doesn't anymore get affected, right? His decision of doing things or not doing things is completely based on pleasure of Krishna, right? Even though something may not be ordinarily, he will not do. If Krishna desires, he will do it. Ordinarily, he might have done something for his own pleasure. If Krishna doesn't want him to do it, he will not do it. So, because of that consciousness, he is freed. Next verse, 65. Prasade sharva dukkana hanir asyopajayate prashanna chetasho hiyashu buddhi paryavadistate. Prasade, an achievement of the costless mercy of the Lord, sarva, of all, dukkana, material miseries, hanihi, destruction, asya, his, upajayate, takes place. Prasanna Chetasaga, of the happy minded, he certainly, ashu, very soon, buddhihi, intelligence, pari, sufficiently. Avasthite becomes established. Translation. For one thus satisfied in Krishna consciousness, the threefold miseries of material existence exist no longer. In such satisfied consciousness, one's intelligence is soon well established. Next verse. There is no purport for this verse. We will continue. 66. And then we will stop at 66. Nasti buddhir ayuktasya na chayuktasya bhavana na chavavata shantir ashantasya kuda shukam na asti. There cannot be buddhi, transcendental intelligence. Ayuktasya, of one who is not connected with Krishna consciousness. Na, not. Cha, and ayuktasya, of one devoid of Krishna consciousness. Bhavana, fixed mind in happiness. Na, not. Cha, and abhavayataha, one who is not fixed. Shantigi, peace. Ashantasya, of the unpeaceful. Kutaga, that is Shukam, happiness. One who is not connected with the Supreme in Krishna consciousness can have neither transcendental intelligence nor a steady mind, without which there is no possibility of peace. And how can there be any happiness without peace? Purport. Unless one is Krishna consciousness, unless one is in Krishna consciousness, there is no possibility of peace. So it is confirmed in the 5th chapter, 5.29, that when one understands that Krishna is the enjoyer of all the good results of sacrifice and penance, that he is the proprietor of all universal manifestations, and that he is the real friend of all living entities, then only can one have real peace. This 5.29, we will read it verse later when it comes. It goes like this: Bhoktaram ekitapasam sarvaloka maheshwaram sukurdam sarva bhuktana yatma mam shanti mrichati. Who can attain peace? One who understands Krishna is the enjoyer of all the sacrifices and penances, and he is the controller of all the planets and demigods, sarvaloka maheshwaram. And then sukurdam sarva bhutana, he is the well-wisher of all living entities. One who understands this, right, he does not get any more agitated anything in this world, he attains peace. Shantim Prichati. Natva Mam Shantim Prichati. One who knows this truth about Krishna, he attains peace. Therefore, if one is not in Krishna consciousness, there cannot be a final goal for the mind. Disturbance is due to the want of an ultimate goal. And one is certain that Krishna is the enjoyer, proprietor, and the friend of everyone and everything, then one can, with a steady mind, bring about peace. Therefore, one who is engaged without a relationship with Krishna is certainly always in distress and is without peace. However, however much he may make a show of peace and spiritual advancement in life. Krishna consciousness is a self-manifested peaceful condition which can be achieved only in relationship with Krishna. So here in this verse, purport very clearly tells that until one has established the relationship with Krishna, understanding that Krishna is the enjoyer of everything, he is the proprietor of everything, he is the controller of everything, everything belongs to him, he will not be able to stay in a peaceful mind. His mind will be always disturbed. So for a devotee who understands this relationship and understands everything belongs to him, including himself, when he engages in service of Krishna, he attains peace. His mind is not anymore agitated. So that is the concept. That is the idea behind controlling the senses. However, one might be trying to put a show of controlling the senses. It will be eventually a matter of time. He will be bewildered. But when he sincerely engages in service of Krishna, his senses will automatically come under control of Krishna. By mercy of Krishna, his senses will be under control. He can overcome this problem. And then he can make spiritual advancement. We will stop here. So from 67 to 72, those verses, the remaining verses, we will complete next week. So that will complete the second chapter. So we are in the final section of the second chapter, Sthita Prajna. We saw that how a person, right, controls his senses, and then how the danger, if the mind is not controlled, how uncontrolled mind can lead to attachment to the sense objects, which can lead to frustration and anger. Anger comes, bewilderment, right? Bewilderment of memory. When the memory is bewildered, intelligence is lost. When the intelligence is lost, everything is finished. So we saw that the importance of controlling the mind, not letting the mind to meditate on sense objects. And then we saw that how, right, a person who is fixed by mercy of Krishna, person who is fixed in Krishna consciousness, right, because of his transcendental intelligence, he has a steady mind. Whereas a person who is not in Krishna consciousness, his mind is not steady. And without a steady mind, there is no possibility of peace. And if there is no peace, where is the question of happiness? There can't be any happiness. So he will be always frustrated. By controlling the mind in service of Krishna, actually he will attain not only peace, he can attain happiness from the heart. Because Krishna will reciprocate from the heart. So that concludes 66 verse. We'll stop here. Anybody has any comments, any questions?
Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you.
Yeah, I have a quick question.
Yes, sir, Prashantji.
Yeah, so in the purport of 60, that 64th shloka, I think halfway through there, it talks about if Krishna wants, the devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable.
Right.
Desirable and undesirable thing be absolute. Otherwise, any person who calls himself or herself as a devotee can justify what they are doing by saying, the Lord wants me to do it.
That's a very good point, Prashantji, you are bringing up. So we will see. Normally, in a normal course, a pure devotee will never, himself claim to be a pure devotee, first of all. He will never do anything saying that Krishna wants me to do it, that's why I'm doing it. In normal course, normally, he will be always follow the rules of the scriptures. He will always follow the do's and don'ts mentioned in the scriptures. But if Krishna wants him to do it, he will do it. He will not make a show of it. He will not enjoy his senses, saying that Krishna wants me to enjoy the senses. That a devotee will never do. The show bottle devotee or a so-called, yogi or sage, he might, because he is not able to control the senses, he say, oh, Krishna wants me to do it, that's why I'm doing it. But a real devotee will never do that. But here, the specific point here mentioned is, right, if Krishna wants, a devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable. For example, this is in connection to Arjuna, we can understand. Normally, Arjuna would have not fought against Bhishma and Drona. But Krishna wants him to fight, hence he is willing to fight. You understand? If a person says that Krishna is telling me, that's why I am doing it, first then that person has to prove that actually he is in touch with Krishna. He cannot just, fake it. So there are several symptoms. Normally, if you present a sense object, he is not interested at all. A person who is not in Krishna consciousness, he will be interested. It's just a matter of time. See, sometimes somebody can cheat some people. One cannot cheat all the people all the time. Eventually, it's a matter of time he will get caught. The so-called show bottle devotees. So he cannot just keep claiming that Krishna wants me to do it, that's why I am doing it. Those are all, pretenders, Midhyacharas. You will never see a great devotee will never engage in something which is abominable. Here we have to understand, in this course, if Krishna wants, a devotee can do anything which is ordinarily undesirable, meaning he may not want to do it, but Krishna wants him to do it, he will do it. The example is Arjuna. Another example is in Chaitanya Charitamrita, right? So the servant of Lord Chaitanya, Govinda, when the Lord, after prasadam, usually lies down. Usually he goes to massage his feet. On this particular day, the Lord was already lying down. So to go to reach the feet of the Lord, he has to cross over the Lord. He has to cross. He has to walk over the Lord. Normally, one should not walk over somebody's body. But Govinda will walk over the body of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu, go to the other side and sit down and massage the feet of Chaitanya Mahaprabhu. After massaging, the Lord is completely, in rest. He will not come out. He will sit there only. When the Lord wakes up, he will ask, "Oh Govinda, while going you crossed my body. Why are you not coming back by crossing my body?" Now, Govinda says, "Lord, even though it is not appropriate to cross over somebody's body, I crossed it over to serve you. After massaging your feet, I cannot cross over your body to come this side because there is no service for me to come this side. Hence I waited." So that way, so normal course of things sometimes. Another example is Srila Prabhupada. Srila Prabhupada took sannyas at the age of 60. He took sannyas, but at the age of 70 he went to America. After going to America, some of his some of the Western devotees, they are interested in Krishna consciousness. But in the Western culture, men and women mingle freely. Then Prabhupada felt that if they mingle freely without being married, it is not good. At least they should be married if they want to interact. That way they are protected. So hence, he will conduct marriage ceremony. A sannyasi normally should not even start fire. Prabhupada, even though he is a sannyasi, what to speak of not only starting the fire, he will conduct a marriage ceremony for his disciples. Prabhupada will tell, what can I do? Because my disciples need to be married for them to be fixed in Krishna consciousness, to protect them from the onslaught of Maya. Even though ordinarily a sannyasi will not do this marriage and all these things, but there is, unavoidability of the situation, I am doing it for the service of people. This is an example. Prashantji, does that answer the question? Answer your question?
Yeah, I think, see, explaining in terms of how it lines up as a righteous thing to do, like the three examples you gave, makes sense. But in purport, where it said undesirable things, see, all three examples you gave, essentially in the end, it was shown that they were not actually undesirable. They were righteous. There was explanation of why they were righteous. So that was the only, it's more semantics. So thanks for your explanation.
No. When I say undesirable, for a sannyasi to start a fire is not at all recommended at all. You should not do it. He doesn't want to do it personally. But he did conduct a marriage ceremony because there is no other help available. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
Grateful to you.
Like that.
That was indeed very authentic, very moving. The way that you have recollected some of your interactions and experiences within the span of 5 minutes, you have given us a lot about how it was valuable to you and what your feelings were towards them. So, a deep, let us say, namaskar and pranams to you for your wonderful sharing, sir. Thank you so much.
Thank you very much.
We also are very grateful to all the members of Powai Forum who have joined us today for this, for Swamiji's discourse. We welcome all of you. Now Vasu will introduce Swamiji.
Namaste everyone. Namaste Swamiji. Hari Om. Warm welcome to all of you.
Okay, thank you very much. We'll stop here.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna. We are going to do next week. I think that is like Katyayani Ji. She was in another meeting.
Thank you, Swamiji. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Hare Krishna, Prabhuji.
Hare Krishna. We'll continue next week.
Thank you. Thank you.
Engineer